Hello and welcome back to the Corona Files, episode 9. And today it's Friday for me here in Australia, and I thought I'd do kind of an Ask Me Anything type episode relating to e-commerce, drop shipping, and everything else. So as you're watching along, if you do have any questions, just leave it as a comment on this live, and I will absolutely chuck it into the mix. I've got 5 questions I'm going to hit up today, and we're talking about things relating to building dropshipping businesses, but also e-commerce more generally. We've got stuff about time management, targeting B2B, what to do when sales nosedive, a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to cover right now. And, you know, if you're seeing this later on, please feel free to comment along with it as well. I'll no doubt jump onto Facebook or wherever you see it and leave a comment as well. So straight into it. First question comes from Triss. I'll put the questions along the bottom there. So Triss's question is about what sort of planning or budgeting do I do, or what do I expect to spend on a high-ticket dropshipping business that I'm building from scratch when I'm just starting out. So his question was around, he's assuming that I don't bootstrap it anymore, and so what do I spend? What do I expect to spend? And I think that's a pretty good question. I'll preface this by saying that I've been building these businesses for 6 years now. So, you know, I'm not at the point where I'm building my first businesses, but the whole notion of bootstrapping, I think, is an interesting one when it comes to these businesses, because a high-ticket dropshipping store, to me, is essentially always going to be, in the grand scheme of things, a fairly bootstrapped business, right? Like, you know, as far as businesses go, it's one of the lowest cost from an entry perspective businesses out there to get into. So in the grand scheme of things, I always think of a dropshipping business as a bootstrapped business, because there's not a high cost. Even if you spend a bit more money than some people, it's still not a high cost venture, and never should be. And I like that. That's what I like about it. I think bootstrapping a business, getting started in that kind of more scrappy way, is a great way to get into business. It teaches you responsibility. It makes you think about things, and you see all too often people that get large chunks of money thrown at them to start businesses fuck it up completely, right? They don't have the sense of personal responsibility and risk associated with it, and that need to really fight for success that you often get when you don't have the cushion of a lot of money to back you up. So, having said that, though, I definitely, you know, thinking about it, I have an amount of money that if I was starting one for myself today, that I would spend. Now, I'll throw a couple of caveats on this. I also build them for other people, and you know that what I spend there is kind of based on their requirements. So there's not really a fixed number there. What gets spent on building that business will come from the conversations that I have with those people. But if I'm starting one for myself today, I've put together just some broad-based numbers to show you what I plan to spend. Now, this is not by any should indicate what you should do or what you should be doing. This is sort of just where I've arrived at, and I've thought about the ones I'm building now, ones I've built in the past, and these numbers are not hard and fast. They're sort of something I've worked on over time. So I'm just going to share up into this incredibly high-tech document that I've put together in about the last 2 minutes. I've totally not prepared for this at all. I'm just taking these questions and giving you my initial answer to them. So I've just chucked this into here. I do have other spreadsheets and obviously business, you know, profit losses and all this sort of stuff, but I'm not going to put them up for this conversation. So these are the numbers. These are my numbers, right? So I split into 2 things. You've got building the business, and then what do you plan to spend on marketing for the first few months? And once you get the marketing up and running, that changes pretty quick as you see results or not. And you want to start scaling things up. These numbers change a lot on the marketing side. But to build the business, you can see sort of the main steps and the main costs broken down. And I almost completely outsourced this project, right? And I'll come back to outsourcing and my approach to that in another episode, because that's a whole topic in and of itself, which is quite important. So I have on my team a developer, somebody who makes calls to suppliers for me. I outsource branding. I outsource product image editing. I outsource the product upload. I outsource content development. So I don't do a lot of this process myself anymore. When I first started out, I absolutely pretty much did it all myself. as most people do. And if you're looking at your first business right now, I think that's absolutely the way you should do it. But I outsource pretty much everything. So the costs you see here take into account the fact that I'm outsourcing. So website development, that includes the cost of a theme for Shopify. I always use a paid theme when I build a new business. It includes the cost of any initial cost of any apps I'm going to put on that Shopify site. I don't use a lot, and I'll dig into those somewhere down the track a bit more. And it also includes the cost of my developer, who I'm going to pay, to go in and make any customizations to the theme that I would like. And I customize every theme I use to my particular taste, or the taste that I want, the look, the feel, the functionality I want for that particular niche. And so generally this is a rough cost. So I'll allocate $1,000, and these numbers are in US dollars actually, if you're watching along in Australia. So I'll allocate $1,000 for that. I may spend on some projects less than that, on some I may spend a bit more, but that's sort of an average price for me. I pay somebody about $750 on average to contact suppliers and gain their approval for me. Once again, there's a bit of variation there depending on how many suppliers I'm contacting for a given niche. Once again, that could be more, but that's sort of an average number. Branding, I'll spend about $300 to outsource that. So that's logos and a few other bits and pieces for social media and that sort of stuff. Product image editing, so that's resizing product images. I don't use some online tool to do that, or some app on my Shopify store. I think that's not really a great way to do it. I get somebody who automates the process through Photoshop, and they do it all for me, actually editing the actual images. And then we change product image names and all that sort of thing. So I'll spend about $300 on that. Once again, that will vary based on how many products in total we're going to upload to the site. The actual uploading the products themselves and fitting them into the format that I like. Once again, outsourced, this varies a bit as well, but $5 per product is roughly what I'm spending, but that may be more. So if I've got products that I want to put a lot more detail onto the product page and I want it formatted in a particular way that is more time consuming, that could be $10 a product. Really depends on what I'm doing there. Now, sometimes I'll put initial content on a site before I launch it. So I'll just put some blog posts up and that sort of thing. So you can see there the cost that I'm roughly paying $200 to $300 for an 1,800 word blog post. And so the total comes out to somewhere around $4,500. So that's what I budget generally, or what I expect to spend generally, somewhere around that, to set up a new business. Now, when it comes to the initial marketing side of things, so for the first few months until I establish, how the business is performing and what sales look like, you can see some numbers there that I will generally spend up to. So about $100 a day on Google Ads, which is about $3,000 a month. Facebook ads, Instagram ads, probably about $1,000 a month. So that's retargeting, as well as probably some cold traffic stuff that I'll test out. I'm very big on producing content for my sites. I love content marketing. So about $2,000 a month to start pumping in some content pieces. I'll often do some of that myself for some niches. So if it's one that I'm particularly interested in, because I like writing content personally, I enjoy it. It's something I like to do. I'll often do a bit of that, so add to that myself if I have the time and the inclination to do so. And then creatives, which means like images for my ads. So I work with a company called No Limit Creatives, fantastic business. If you do a lot of particularly social ads or display ads or things like that, they're a great business to work with. It's a unlimited graphic design service basically. I'll put the link to them in with the recording of this, but I spend with them probably about $500 a month. But I do a lot of that stuff, right? So if you're just starting out, it's probably not appropriate to work with that sort of a business because you don't have that much stuff to do for them. So look, that's my cost there overall for what I spend on building a new business, a new high-ticket dropshipping business. So Tris, that's what I'm looking at. Now with the marketing cost, of course, I'll reassess that. Even after the first month, I'm starting to reassess those costs, and I might say, hey, things are going really great. I'm going to start spending more, or things are not going swimmingly. I need to scale back, or maybe I need to spend money on other things. So that can change fairly rapidly. Now, our next question comes from Robert. Thanks, Robert, for the question. And Robert's question was, if your shop has nosedived due to the new current market situation, i.e., change in economic fortunes related to coronavirus and everything that's going on there, where would you put your focus and time? So I actually I actually did a presentation on this recently at my friend Isaac Smith and Danny Carlson's Survive and Thrive e-commerce summit, which happened a few weeks ago now. So I did a presentation on exactly what I think you should do in that time. So I'll just run across the bottom of the screen there. You can actually go and get that presentation plus a free course to put that stuff into action at that URL that you see going below the screen, buildsoldgrowrepeat.com/thrive. And you can also go and you can get access to all the recordings from that e-commerce summit where there were 50 speakers, absolutely amazing, put together at super short notice. Isaac and Danny smashed it out of the park on I think, at least for Isaac, his first turn doing an online event. They had 50 speakers talking on just about this, like what should you do when things change, often in a negative way. So I think there's a couple of things that I would say here. The first is that the first thing to do is really take stock of where you're at financially. So if your sales have gone down, you're paying for marketing, your conversion rate's dropping, maybe you're still getting a lot of traffic and you're paying for it. You want to take stock of, I guess, your financial situation and say, what does my runway look like? Like if my sales have gone down, what does my runway look like? What do my costs look like? Can I sustain what I'm currently paying for? And do I need to reel that in? Because I mean, you do need to be responsible and not put yourself too far into a hole that you can't get out of and that you're going to be stuck in when the market recovers, right? Because we don't know how long, at the time that I'm speaking, that this coronavirus stuff's going to go on for. Maybe it's a long time, maybe it's a shorter time. But the point is, things will change for the better at some point. And you need to be ready to be in the market and to be ramping things up at that point. You don't want to get to that point and be, significantly in the hole because you kept spending money when you weren't making any sales, right? And you went into debt or whatever because of that. So the first thing is really to have a good hard look and say, look, sales are down. I'm not getting the profit I was getting. What have I got in the bank? And what do I need to rein in for the time being? Do I need to cut costs? Or can I sustain what I'm doing? Or do I just shift what I'm doing? Now, if I'm in the situation where, I can't sustain my existing marketing, so maybe I'm running a lot of pay-per-click ads and I need to pull that back in because I'm not getting the return on those anymore, even though traffic could still be coming in, but I'm just not getting the conversions. My approach is really just to get back down to basics and say, look, my market is still there, my customers still exist, they're just not buying right now. But I can use this opportunity to strengthen my relationship and my bond with my ideal customers and my market so that when they are ready to buy again, my relationship with them is much better and I'm the natural choice for them to buy from in my niche, in my market, however you want to frame that. My products that I'm selling and my business is the people who have kept in touch with them through this process. And I guess one thing that never stops happening is that your market never stops consuming content when economies go bad. People are still hungry for information in that time. People still have problems that they're looking to solve or that they're thinking about solving in the future. And that's the space that you can fill. When you run an e-commerce business, you're in the business of solving people's problems, right? That's what your products are doing for them. Your products are solving a problem that they currently experience. And if you can't sell them products to solve their problems, what can you do for them to solve problems they may be experiencing that relate to your market? Well, you can provide them useful information. So when I can't make sales, my focus will switch to building my audience, getting in touch, staying in touch with my customers, keeping at the front of their mind, keep delivering them value in any way that I can. And for me, as somebody who's really big on content marketing, it's something I really love. and I think it's one of the best ways to grow an e-commerce business, along with pay-per-click advertising, which I love as well, as many people know. You know, I will sort of switch to that. And so I'll increase my efforts there and increase my efforts in promoting content to my audience, not with the thought that they'll buy something, with the thought that they'll remain in my audience, and that when they're ready to buy, you know, that value will be repaid because I'm the person in my market that did that. So look, there's a long conversation about how you do that. And like I say, the best way to learn is to grab that free course, which you can at the link below, that's scrolling along the bottom of the screen and is in the comments for this this live. So next question actually came from Candace, and taking a bit of a different step here. How does one get into creating Shopify sites for other people to help bring their businesses online? Interesting question, Candace, and I'll give a shout out to my mate Ben, who actually jumped in and answered this one in the Facebook group earlier. And he's, you know, Ben's a great mate, awesome e-commerce marketer. His reply was, start, get case studies, scale. Simple answer, and in a way it is kind of that simple. So thanks for that, Ben. I'll add a little bit of meat and bones to that though. So there's two parts to building. Well, there's probably three parts, right? To building Shopify sites for other people. Actually, there's a lot of parts to it, and there's a bit of a process. It's actually not necessarily as easy as it sounds, or not as easy as it sounds to do it well for the right people, right? And this is the trick. But to build Shopify sites for other people, broadly speaking, you've got to be good at two things. You've got to be good at website development. So, you know, you've got to be able to put together a site that is well put together, that looks, you know, up to the required standard. I'm not going to say building a beautiful website is the key, because it's really not. But more importantly, you've got to know how to put together a website for somebody that converts, right? And this is the bit where a lot of people who want to get into designing and developing websites miss. They're not good at building a website that converts. They're good at building a pretty website. Two different things often. You can have a pretty website that converts, but a pretty website by itself doesn't convert. So if you're going to go into this this field, you need to be able to do those things. So if you want to build websites for other people and you've only ever built one yourself, you know, I'd probably say you need to have a bit more practice at it, because, you know, you may not have established that you can actually build a website that converts well. But if you feel that you have, that's fine, right? You don't need to have run an uber successful e-commerce business in its totality to be able to build websites for other people, right? You know, web design companies are not full of successful e-commerce business owners, right? They're full of people who have the technical skills to do it and the knowledge. So that's the first thing. The next thing I would say is you have to get clear on who you want to build them for. So if you're just saying creating Shopify sites, yeah, obviously you're creating them for people who have a business that's either going to or does use Shopify, but there's a very wide variation in there. Are you going to focus on people who are doing drop shipping? Are you going to focus on people who are just starting out? Are you going to focus on people who are in sort of the middle? They've already started, they're making some sales, but you know they want to go further. Or are you going to try and chase people who are on the Shopify Plus end of the scale that might be doing millions and millions in revenue a year, and are, you know, looking for a Shopify Plus implementation, which is a whole nother ball game. You know, I mean, you're talking about people who might be spending anywhere between $10,000 and $100,000 and taking up, you know, 6 months, 3 or 4 months for the whole build project. So that's a big ask. If you're just starting out building Shopify sites, that's not somewhere you want to go. So get clear on who your target customer is going to be, right? And then you also have to take a step back and think, well, how much am I going to charge for it? You got to be pretty clear on that. And I can tell you that usually what you think you're going to charge, you need to increase it by about 30%, right? And don't be tempted to go really low, right? Like if you go really low, it's, you know, you've either got to pump out really high volume using really cheap labor, or it's just a really shitty experience. And trust me, I've made that mistake in my time of charging less than I should for the work, and it's really just becomes a job. You're really just creating yourself a job. So get clear on what you want to charge, and make sure there's actually profit in it for you. So you have to be able to estimate how much time it's going to take you within that, and how much profit you can have sitting on top of that. Because you got to pay yourself for your time, but then you've also got to make money, right? So there's that aspect, and then you have to have a really clear service offer, right? So you can't just go into it with, oh, I'm going to build you a Shopify website. And it's going to have some of these features, and it's going to look a bit like this, right? That's really vague. And so there's no expectations there, very little expectations for the client, and you don't exactly know what you're doing. So you have to get right down and specify before you accept payment for a project, or before you start work. You have to get the client to agree to a very specific outline of what it is you're going to implement, what it's going to look like, what your approach to revisions is. So this is a very important one. You get to the end of the first draft build, and they come back and say, no, I don't like any of it. It's shit. What are you going to do? You're going to start from scratch, or are you going to say, look, you get this many revisions in this amount of time, you get this much support post-implementation. So you have to have a very thorough, proposal, even if you're operating at the low end, and even particularly at the low end of the market, right? You really need to be very specific about that, because people are going to come back to you with requests to change this, change that, do this, do that. Oh, can you add this on as well? Oh, can you add that on as well? And what happens is, this is why I say generally you should charge 30% more than you think you should, at least, is that your time then starts to really blow out doing all these little fiddly things, or paying somebody to do them for you, and that eats up your profit in the deal, and you come out at the end and you're like, that really didn't feel worth it, right? So you've really got to lock the client in and get their agreement to that before you charge them anything and before you start any work whatsoever. And there's plenty of places online. If you look up like a template website development proposal, there's plenty of free ones online, like templates that you can use to base a proposal around. So that's what I'd say about that. So once you work those things out, as Ben says, you need to get some case studies. So in the beginning, if you haven't done it for anybody else, obviously you're not going to have case studies of actual live websites that you've developed for other businesses. You might have some for yourself, and if you're happy to share those with prospective clients, that's fine. Go and do it. But what I would suggest you do in that case is, to build Shopify websites for people, you're going to have a Shopify Partners account. In a Shopify Partners account, you can produce development stores. I would suggest you produce some of those and actually just do some mock-up websites. Make kind of like you would for a high-ticket dropshipping store, building that initial store before you call supplies. Do some mock-up sites that show that across a few different designs and different features, things like that show your skills in the area, right? So that when a prospective client goes, yeah, great, I'm happy to work with you, but can you show me some examples of what you've done? If nothing else, you can show them that. You can say, look, here's three sites I've done before as examples. And then once you've actually built a few more for people, make sure when you're building them that you ask the client, once again, in your service delivery offer, do you mind if I use this as one of my case studies in the future for future clients as a site that I'm going to show them? And if people are okay with that, you've then got your case studies, and you've really got to have that, particularly like if you're working with friends and people you know a bit, that's not so important because they're going to trust you to a certain extent. But if you're going out, reaching out to cold clients, people who don't know you, who haven't spent much time with you and don't have as high a level of trust for you, if you're providing a service, you're going to have a much higher success rate of getting clients if you can point to things you've done in the past that have worked, that people have been happy with. And of course, as you work with clients, getting testimonials as well as their case studies is a very important thing to do. So that's probably my answer to that. Candice, I hope that's helpful, and maybe we'll catch up about that sometime. Next question comes from Jarko. I like this question. How do you juggle so many projects simultaneously without going crazy? I know you've talked about how you manage your time, but there must be more to it. So in Jarko, I went through my Build, Sell, Grow, Repeat program last year, and we spent a bit of time talking about time management and prioritization there. And this is really, for me, I mean, it's a good question, but for me, like, how you manage your time and prioritization is a massive part of being successful, particularly as somebody who's starting a new business. You're starting from scratch. You don't have a big team behind you. If you're not good at managing your time, if you're easily distracted, if your attention is shit, then you're going to find it very difficult to make progress. So and when I first started out, I was terrible at this. I didn't even know about the whole time management thing. I had no idea what this was, right? And it took me years to really get really firm with myself, build some habits around that. And by doing that, I came to recognize how very important it was. And ever since then, probably going back a couple of years now when I started, it's something I'm super passionate about now, because the benefits are massive. But look, Jarko knows I do a bunch of different things. You know, I'm coaching programs, building businesses, running my own businesses, doing some marketing services. Probably one of my biggest self-criticisms of myself historically is that I actually say yes to too many things and do take on too many things myself. And in the past, often that's led to me doing not as good a job as I would like of those things. So a job that I can't be 100% proud of. And so I think I have got better at this, and the ability to say no when opportunities present themselves is actually a very good skill. And I've got better at that. But I still do, multiple different things. And look, I think there's a number of things that go into it. Time management is a massive part of that. So it's not all of it, but it is a massive part of it. So every day, I start every day with a to-do list that I set the night before. I don't set it in the morning at the start of the day. I set it the night before. And the reason for that is a psychological reason, is that if you set your to-do list the night before, your brain will actually subconsciously start working through that to-do list in your downtime before you go to bed and while you're sleeping. And when you get up in the morning and start attacking that, you can often find that the flow of it becomes a lot easier because your brain has already actually started processing some of those things. So you don't come to it cold. Whereas if you get up in the morning, you write your to-do list and then you start on it, the start will kind of be a bit like thinking through how you're going to do that, which takes up time, right? And that's what you don't want to do. So I do it the night before. I have a to-do list, which is usually never more than 4 or 5 things. I'll order them in terms of priority. So the most important thing, the thing that's going to have the biggest impact for me, will be at the start of the day in a larger chunk of time, and then smaller things slot in behind that. And I will try and work those around like coaching, consulting time slots that I have in my calendar. So that's part of it. Knowing what to prioritize is also a big thing. And once again, this is a very long conversation, but it's very important to know what you should be working on. It's very easy to work on a lot of different things, but picking which things are actually going to move the needle for you in the medium and long term are the things that you should work on more than the shorter term things. Now, I know the biggest problem for a lot of solo e-commerce business owners that really screws with their time management is customer service. So if they're doing their own customer service on their store, it is infinitely hard to manage your time effectively because your schedule constantly and your flow, your thought process is constantly getting interrupted by the phone ringing or by emails coming in or online chats or whatever. So I always recommend that you outsource customer service as early as you can in the piece. because you personally will become so much more productive at growing your business if you can get that constant interruption off your plate. Now, customer service is super important. I don't want to detract from the importance of serving your customers effectively and at the highest possible quality, but you have to balance that need with the need that customer service does not grow your business quickly. It's important. Yes, it results in good reviews and it results in recommendations, referrals, all this sort of stuff. Less returns, all that sort of business, right? Absolutely. And a higher conversion rate, yes. But there's a lot of other stuff that only you as the business owner can do to push your business along. So you need to get that off your plate, because there's a ton of people out there who can probably do customer service better than you can, if I'm honest with you. So time management prioritization is a big part of it. But the other part of it is that I think I do things very quickly. I work very quickly. I make decisions very quickly. And so the things that I do now, building businesses, dropshipping businesses, e-commerce businesses, providing the services that I provide, doing coaching, consulting, these sort of things. I mean, I've been doing this stuff, some of it for 6 years, some of it for at least 3 years now. So I'm actually not doing a lot of things that are new to me. I'm doing things that I'm very practiced in. So the time it takes me to do things might take other people who have not done these things as much twice as long or 3 times as long. So I do move through things very quickly compared to other people. And this is one of the advantages for me of having provided services and coaching services as well to so many e-commerce businesses, is that I've done a lot of things many times, which even if you've run multiple of your own e-commerce businesses, you haven't done them as many times as I've done them. And that means I'm very practiced and have probably more thorough processes. So I have good systems that I follow for a lot of the things that I do, which shorten the amount of time required to do them. And a lot of those systems and processes are actually carried out by other people. So I don't do a lot of the work that I do, right? I do, like building, as we talked about in an earlier answer, building the e-commerce businesses, I do very little of that hands-on myself. I pay other people to do that, right? So I can juggle multiple of those projects because I'm not actually doing much. I'm managing, I'm overseeing the process. I'm doing bits and pieces here and there, yes, but I'm not doing the complete deal. And so I can do 3, 4, 5, 6 of those at one time. And for me, it's more about my skill is making sure all of those things are happening in the right order, that the projects are moving along as they need to. And it's more of a management type oversight role that I'm doing at the moment. I could even outsource that if I wanted to, honestly. So I think that's a big secret to managing multiple things, is developing solid processes for how they do, sticking to doing what you know, right? So the hardest thing, and this is what I struggled with a lot earlier in my business experience, was constantly taking on new things that I hadn't really done before. And when you do a new thing, you do it incredibly slowly. And you don't get it right the first few times either, generally. Whereas now I'm pretty much doing things that I've done a lot of the time, and so it's natural. It flows quickly. It's easy to do. I know how to do it. It's easy to outsource. So becoming, it's that whole thing about mastery, I suppose. Mastering certain things means that you can do those at a different level in a shorter time frame to a higher level of quality quicker than other people who have not reached that level. And outsourcing, of course. I mean, it's key. Me individually, I'm not amazing really at a lot of things. There's just like, I can't, I'm not a developer. I can't code anything to save myself. Very basic, even though I've been working with websites for so many years. There's just somebody who's better at that than me. So it makes no sense to use my time to do that. I outsource it straight away to somebody. I don't even think about it. Just tell them what I want. They go and work out how to do it. So that's a massive part. So time management, effective time management great processes, outsourcing, practice, and experience. That's what enables me to juggle what looks like some people multiple projects. The fifth thing I'll throw in there, and this is a newer one for me, and something, once again, I'm super passionate about, is I focus a lot now on making myself more, I don't really want to use the word productive because I don't like that word, but I invest a lot of time and money into making myself perform better at the moment than I ever have in my business life. So, and that once again means that I do things quicker. My brain works faster. Like I'm 37 now. I don't mind sharing how old I am. I'm 37 now. I'm going to be 38 soon. And I'm fitter, stronger. My brain works better than it did in my 20s. I have absolutely no doubt about that. I see opportunities quicker. I think clearer. I'm alert, more in the moment than I ever have been in my life at this age. And that wasn't the case a few years ago. I struggled a lot with all sorts of things. I was a pack-a-day smoker. I've been pretty much an alcoholic, and you know, I've had problems with eating too much food, all this sort of stuff, inactivity, all this sort of stuff, right? I've been through all of that, got over it. And when I started businesses, I was kind of like, well, I need to make the money and then I'll spend time on myself. I'll have money to spend on myself. And once I've got the success, then I'll spend more time. I'll be able to spend more time making myself better. And that's really, a lot of people think of it that way when they get into business, right? And that's completely the wrong way of looking at it, right? Your business doesn't make you successful, right? A lot of people think that, oh, this person's successful because they have this great business, right? This business that makes $100 million a year. That's why I see them on social media. That's why they're successful. It's not the case at all, right? The reason that that business makes $100 million a year is because that person made it so, and they couldn't have made it so if they weren't in the right place to make it so. And so I kind of realized this, and I just pulled back, and I've spent, like, in dollar terms, I spend a lot of money improving my health, my mental health, my financial health. So I invest in that. I'll invest in that tens of thousands of dollars this year, just in that, right? Not in businesses, just in making myself better, because I know, and I've seen the difference. Since I've started doing that, I've made more money for myself. That investment is paying off, and I'm still only, fairly early on in doing that. The things I've got planned to do for myself over the coming years are much bigger. And so I think that's also helps me to juggle things. I've been able to reduce my levels of stress significantly, even in the last 6 to 12 months. And so juggling multiple things feels a lot easier than it did when I was younger, when I was earlier in my business experience. I wasn't as healthy. Things used to bug my brain. I used to struggle a lot with brain fog, anxiety about certain things to do with business. And, it's taken some time and some awakenings within myself and a whole bunch of practices and new habits that I've developed. And I think that is really what enables me to manage multiple things at the same time, as well as, if you know me, I've got 4 kids, 3 of whom are under the age of 5. I've got a fantastic wife who looks after them as well. But, that's a lot, right? And so, it's a big answer. And I'd love to come back to some of these things in the future. But that's really the 5 main things for me that do it. So last question here I want to jump into, and thanks for that, Jaco, is from Randy. Any tips for promoting and targeting trades, so B2B customers, as opposed to general consumers for your e-commerce business? Look, B2B sales on e-commerce businesses are fantastic. And absolutely, some of the marketing tactics that you use for B2C, retail consumers, do work for B2B. So you can absolutely find B2B customers on Google, search marketing, of course. You will find, it kind of depends what industry you're in and what industry you serve as the answer to this. So some you will find on social media a lot. So I had a business once where I had a large number of interior design clients, and marketing on places like Pinterest, for example, was a fantastic way to get in front of them, because they often use Pinterest for inspiration and all this sort of thing. And they're very active on that platform, as they are on Instagram and things like that. I've also used LinkedIn a lot. I think LinkedIn, even for things that you wouldn't expect, once again, I used LinkedIn a few years ago, and I built thousands of connections on LinkedIn with interior designers and architects, construction companies, all sorts, made connections there, and actually started pitching them about my business via LinkedIn, messaging on LinkedIn, which resulted in business. So I think, past the sort of more marketing-based tactics, I mean, B2B sales are all about relationships. So you've got to reach out and make contact in some way, right? Often as well, because you may be looking at disrupting an existing relationship. So the business you're approaching may already have a relationship that provides the products that you want to provide to them. And so you're essentially trying to come in on top of that and get your foot in the door. So, that can take a bit of time and multiple contacts, right? And so you need to start making that contact. And the downside with that is that if you're going to rely on picking up the phone and calling them, that can be a very slow process. And so for Randy, what I would say, and what I think does work when it's done in the right way, if you want to start targeting trades on a higher level, at a higher rate, so on bulk, that you absolutely can do it with cold outreach. So whether that's through a platform like LinkedIn, and there are definitely strategies and tools to help you do automated outreach on LinkedIn, which is a little grey hat as far as LinkedIn is concerned, but I've done it. It does work, and it still works. Cold email outreach works when it's done right. A lot of people will say it doesn't work. They're wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not doing it right. It works if it's done right. And on that one, Randy, I would actually say, because you're in my master's program, if you think about the e-commerce skyscraper method that we learned in there for link building outreach, using a number of tools there that we use, so building links from external websites, you can run exactly that same process. And if you have a quick think about this, you'll work it out. You can run exactly that same process to automate outreach to businesses. So if you scrape a bunch of publicly available business details using tools like hunter.io, you can then do a mail merge with Mailshake, which is an online mail outreach tool, to send bulk personalized emails to businesses seeking to establish a connection. Once you establish the connection, get a response, you then move it more offline and start, at that point, you then call them, you have more email communication, and you start introducing yourself further and further to that business, let them know what you do. And that's actually a system, and all of those tools that we went across in those lessons in my master's program are built exactly for that purpose, as well as the purpose that we use them for, the link outreach that we use them for there. So if I needed to go out and start contacting people, and I mean, I did this recently for the co-working space that I'm involved with here in Coolum Beach, where I live. We did outreach to other businesses in the area who might be seeking for extra office space. Exactly that process, cold email outreach, and that resulted in business for that co-working space. So that's what I would say to that. And once again, that can be completely outsourced. So you can get a virtual assistant to run that whole outreach process for you, to the point where you have some level of acceptance and you need to start picking up the phone and calling those businesses, in which case you probably want to do that yourself. So I hope that helps, not hurts, Randy. I don't want it to hurt. And that's our last question for this Friday. So if you want to grab the recordings of the Corona Files, and particularly this video, you can see the URL scrolling across the bottom of your screen now. If you're listening on audio, it is at buildsellgrowrepeat.com/corona-files. You can get all the past recordings, all future recordings, and of course, I'm throwing in a bunch of freebies, bonus content, and materials in there as well from time to time, which are not available anywhere else unless you're paying for them. So it's completely free as well, I should say. There's no cost there, no pitch, no nothing, just value. So thanks for your time today. If you're watching live or if you catch this up later, good to talk with you. I'm going to go to the beach. Enjoy your weekend.